Clear prop.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, Central here. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day as always. The little disclaimer you see on your screen right now is one that I include on all of my videos that show real-life flying. It's primarily directed toward those who are non-pilots and maybe those who are just starting to learn how to fly. However, I'm going to be extending this a little bit today to those of you who already are pilots. I'm going to be doing a steep turn in today's video a little bit later on, and I don't want anybody going out and trying this if they're not proficient. I'm doing this in the context of I am proficient at steep turns, and I'm doing it in an aircraft that is capable of steep turns that I'm very familiar with. The unfortunate truth of the matter is that a lot of pilots, the last time they've seen a steep turn was on their check ride. So if you're not comfortable doing steep turns, if you don't do them regularly, and you want to try and do a steep turn like this, I really highly recommend that you go get a little bit of recurrent training. Rather than give you the somewhat cliche line of don't try this at home, I'm going to leave you with the last two sentences found at the very back of the POH for my Beechcraft Sundowner. Know your aircraft's limitations and your own. Never exceed either. So I'm sure most of my audience is familiar with the YouTube channel Greg's Airplanes and Automobiles. If you're not familiar with his channel, you really should check it out. Greg is a friend of this channel, and we've collaborated a little bit before in the past. However, what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be taking some statements made in two of his videos, and I'm going to be expounding upon those with a little bit of a real-world example. This way you can see some of the differences between theoretical numbers and what you're going to actually expect to see in real life. So one of the videos that I'm going to be pulling information from is based on the P-51 and its turn performance. The other one is based on the Corsair, the F4U, and its turn performance, specifically with flaps. However, that's not going to play into today's video. In both cases, I'm taking information that can be applied more generally to all aircraft. So let's go ahead and look at the first clip. This is going to be from the video on the P-51.
Before we go any farther, I need to say something that tends to confuse a lot of people. The aircraft's turn radius is only controlled by two things: speed and bank angle. That's it. All the other factors are only used to determine what speed and bank angle the plane is capable of using without stalling or braking. You might be.
Now that statement is going to be very important for today's video, and it's not just theoretical. This is very much the reality of things. It is measurable. And the fact of the matter is, for any given bank angle and any given speed, you can calculate the turning radius of any aircraft. And in fact, if you have two aircraft, regardless of what type of aircraft they are, and they're carrying the exact same bank angle and the exact same speed, they're going to have the exact same turn radius. The one thing you should keep in mind, however, regarding this statement is that it is based on perfect or ideal conditions. When you start throwing other external factors into it, that's where things can change a little bit. Let's go ahead and look now at the second clip from the video about the Corsair. This clip is going to be covering a theoretical dogfight between an F4U Corsair and a Japanese Frank, and some of the maneuvers that the Corsair pilot would be trying to do in order to defeat the Frank.
At 81 degrees of bank, our plane will be pulling 6.4 Gs and have a stall speed of 222 knots. Now, I have yet to meet a pilot that can control bank angle within 1 degree, let alone do it while pulling a 6G turn, which is why pilot skill has a lot to do with turn rate. The pilot's ability to keep the airplane in a high G turn and just on the edge of stall is a bigger variable in many cases than the actual aircraft's turn performance.
So what Greg's talking about here is what I mentioned earlier, those external factors to the aircraft's performance. The book numbers are very rarely going to be matched in real life, especially when it comes to situations where you're dealing with pilot skill level or perhaps even comfort level when it comes to these types of maneuvers. Now, in this theoretical turn fight here, this plane's being flown on the ragged edge. It's right on the verge of stalling the entire time that it's being flown in this regime. And that has very real inherent dangers, at least in real life. Obviously not in the theoretical situation, but in real life, there's a very real danger there. Even if you have a perfectly highly skilled pilot who is able to fly the airplane right on the edge, you have to consider those other external factors or environmental factors. For instance, where I live, it's been my experience that even on beautiful, clear days, you almost always have wind. You almost always have some type of turbulence. You've got thermals. You've got sink. You've got all sorts of other things that you have to deal with while you're maneuvering the aircraft. And if you were to be flying it on the very edge and all of a sudden you were to hit a pocket of turbulence, that could upset the aircraft and could put it into a dangerous situation like a spin. So with that in mind, let's go ahead now and look at a real-world example. The first thing we're going to do is pull some numbers from the POH of my aircraft. We're going to look at a theoretical turn performance at a given bank angle based on flying the ragged edge, whatever the book says the stall speed would be at that particular bank angle. And then we're going to look at what we can actually safely do in real life, in real-world conditions, with real-world external factors. So what you're looking at here is a picture of a table taken directly from the POH of my aircraft. And what it shows is the different stall speeds you can expect at different bank angles. And what you'll notice is that they are increasing from level flight all the way up here to 60 degrees, which is the last value given in this table. Why is that? Why does the stall speed increase? Well, it increases to the square root of the load factor, and in a level coordinated turn at these various bank angles, you are going to be increasing the load factor. So at level flight, obviously you're experiencing 1g, 1 times Earth's gravity. At 30 degrees of banks, it's going to be barely noticeable, maybe 1.1 g thereabouts, maybe a little more. At 45 degrees of bank, it's going to be close to 1.4, and at 60 degrees of bank, now you're talking about a load factor of 2 times Earth's gravity, or 2g. So that's why you're getting an increase in stall speed here. Now, the POH numbers are generally based off of max gross. I'm going to be flying the aircraft in utility category for this video, so my stall speed at that bank angle would actually be a little bit less. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly at 60 degrees, and I'm going to stay above this number just for safety factor. And in fact, the entry speed that is given for a steep turn for this aircraft is 116 knots. I'm not going to quite be doing that because I'm going to be flying a lighter aircraft, like I said. Again, all the numbers in the POH are generally looking at your max gross. For what I'm doing, I'm going to actually have to reduce my speeds, my stall speed, my maneuvering speed, and all that. So what I'm going to be targeting is going to be approximately 100 knots. Now, one more thing before we get into the real-world example. I'm sure someone's probably going to ask, why do the turn at 60 degrees of bank for the example? Why not more? Why not less? Well, the reason we wouldn't want to do any more than 60 degrees of bank is a regulatory one. Basically, FAR 91.303 says anything that's beyond 60 degrees of bank is really getting into aerobatics territory. You're not really doing steep turns so much anymore. You're getting into aerobatics, so you really need to have a parachute for that. The reason we don't want to do less than 60 degrees in this case is just a practical one. When it comes to my attitude indicator, it has marks for 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, and 60 degrees. It doesn't have a 45 degree mark like a lot of modern AIs do. It also doesn't have one for 50. And of course, 45 would be the standard for your private pilot, and 50 would be the standard for your commercial when it comes to your steep turns. So I don't have either one of those marks to really look at. It's just really easy for me to put it on the 60, and that way you can see what's going on. nothing displayed within 5 nautical miles. We are also going to do 2 90-degree clearing turns. We are in a sparsely populated area, and we're near grass runway. In case anything goes wrong, we can land there.
Possible traffic 00, Quebec 9843. 172 Tango, Quebec. Primo, runway 24, crossing Bedfield, pier dropping into the downwind. Lake over.
Ashboro traffic, Turkey 5 Fox Lima left downwind, 21 Ashboro departing area to northeast.
Okay.
Alright, here we go.
Apologize, traffic, good morning, enter left down. County, crosswind 46. Possible traffic 40, pier Quebec is on mile number 3, landing number 2, Hartsville.
I'd say that wasn't too bad considering the turbulence. So that was the actual turn executed. What can we learn from that? Well, according to the POH, if you'll recall, the theoretical stall speed for my aircraft at 60 degrees of bank was 88 knots, and 88 knots at 60 degrees of bank would give us a turn radius, according to this online calculator, of approximately 400 feet, 398 if you want to be exact. Now, obviously, we were not going to be achieving that. Obviously, I wanted to keep a little bit of safety factor in, keep a little bit of extra speed, so I was shooting for 100 knots. What I ended up doing is starting the turn a little bit below 100 knots, going a little bit above 100 knots, and then coming back down to 100 knots. Overall, averaged out to about 100 knots. So I met my goal. I was within 5 knots plus or minus, so that's good. As far as altitude, I was able to maintain that fairly well, so we were holding a constant load factor. I did go plus or minus 50 feet on my target altitude of 3,000 feet, which, considering the windy, gusty, turbulent conditions I was in, I'm quite pleased with that. In fact, those kinds of numbers fall well within the ACS requirements for a commercial steep turn, so quite happy with that. What we get number-wise with that is this. So 100 knots at 60 degrees of bank, that's going to result in a turn radius of approximately 514 feet, according to this online calculator. And even that is not exact. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of variance in real life in those kinds of conditions. So what you really should be taking away from this is that you're not going to be able to meet the book numbers. You're pretty much never going to be able to meet the book numbers because you're not going to have a perfect day, a perfect aircraft, or a perfect pilot. Why is this important? Well, it's pretty obvious why it's important when it comes to air combat, but even for general aviation, knowing that you can't meet the book numbers is very important, because the last thing you want to do is end up in a situation where you are trying to fly the book numbers, you can't get the performance out of it, and you really needed that performance. Just as an example, let's say that you live in mountainous terrain, and you've flown into a box canyon. Can you get out? Well, you need to do flight planning ahead of time, obviously, to avoid those kind of situations, but if you find yourself in that situation, and you know what the turn radius should be for your aircraft, you might not be able to meet it. So practicing this stuff, understanding this stuff, that you're not going to be able to meet the book value is very important. In that kind of a situation, 100 feet could be the difference between life and death. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed that little look at turn performance and the real-world example. If you haven't seen the 2 videos that I mentioned here from Greg's channel, definitely check those out. I'm going to be leaving a link to both of those videos in a pinned comment below this one, so definitely go check those out. Also, before you go, however, there is one more thing that I wanted to just draw your attention to. I did show this page on the video from my POH, and you'll notice that it shows 3 different categories for my aircraft. A normal category, a utility category, and an aerobatic category. Unfortunately, I can't fly in the aerobatic category as the airplane is right now. There are a few more components that I would need to add to the airplane in order for it to qualify for aerobatic category, and those are being shown on your screen right now. Now, I know that some of you out there do deal with aviation and aviation maintenance, so if any of you know where I can get these parts, know where I can get these STCs, please don't hesitate to contact me via Discord, link in the description below. I would be interested in getting my hands on these particular kits, if at all possible, and for a reasonable price. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I will catch you later.